got off the ground through some very unlikely people. Paul the Apostle was Saul. He was walking with a letter to go and arrest.
Saul is his Hebrew name. Paul is his name in Greek.
Christians. I mean, think about this. And something...
In fact, if you look at the actual historicity of early Christian thought, mainly Christianity was spread by women and not Paul. Paul would set up the churches and get them running, and then he would go off and set up another church and get him running. The actual word of mouth was spread mainly by the wives of traders and the such. It just is.
We don't
Paul
have TV, have a story.
Paul even mentions the women running the church in some of his epistles. It's one of the ways we can tell which ones are real, which ones aren't, because actual Paul is really for women in the church. Non-Pauline epistles are like, fucking get the women out.
Yeah, suppress them.
Yeah, it's almost like Christian thought changed when they gained power and went, oh, we don't need the help from whoever we can to get going. Fuck everyone. We're in power now. So we'll make some new books that say different things.
Transformed him. And he would go on and write half of the New Testament. I mean, it's incredible through that experience that he had, writing 13 letters.
7. If you'd done your study and your historicity, you would know that virtually all biblical scholars say he only wrote 7 of them. So if you had done your research and you had known about the historicity, which you're claiming that none of us do, you would know this very, very simple fact.
Not only that, you think about the disciples. They could hardly follow Jesus. But after his resurrection, they would be willing to suffer. Some would even be willing to die a martyr's death.
All of those stories are not in the Bible. They are all in extra-biblical sources that started to appear in the 2nd century CE. They were stories made up well after the fact, with no historical proof that they ever happened whatsoever.
So fan fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically fan fiction.
No, I think one person... does one of them get martyred in Acts? 1 or 2 of them might get martyred in Acts, but not. That's it. And they talk about, like, Peter being crucified upside down. Extra biblical account that happened 2.5 century and a half, 2.5 centuries later. You know what I mean? There's so much of this shit was extra biblical stuff that was made up later.
All this embellishment.
Yeah.
Lots of it.
Because the Bible doesn't say what happened to the apostles. Right? And people went, well, that's weird. They're the people that followed Jesus. We should know what happened to Jesus. And then other people go, look at this text that I definitely found that doesn't talk about today at all.
This is not my handwriting.
Yeah. It's like some of the stuff that's in the Pauline epistles talks about shit that wasn't happening in Christianity until like centuries later. It's just mental. And they're like, it's all true. And it's like, come on, we can know these things now. This isn't fucking a couple hundred years ago where it was kind of really bad if you read the Bible in English. You know, it was the devil's language and all that. Come on.
Yeah, like these words didn't exist until this century.
Yeah, you won't hear these fuckers talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi scripts at all, will you? You know what I mean?
No, it's too much. There's too many of them.
They show this conflicting views about everything, and it adds cognitive dissonance to people. We can't mention them.
Yeah, some of these just add extra gods in. You can't have that. There's only one.
And so I think that the resurrection is the place that I just go. For me, it folds back into the resurrection. If Jesus rose from the grave, then he really did die. And if Jesus really did die, then he really did live. And when he really did live, he validated the Old Testament, and he said he was going to be rejected, die, be buried, rise again, and the Comforter was going to be sent.
So, if this did this, then this is this, and this is this, and if this did this, and this did this, and this did this, it's a lot of ifs.
It starts on a lot of ifs.
And it's like, oh, well, Jesus said that he would be crucified.
Well, after the fact.
No, before. And it's like, you do realise that if I'm writing a story, and I know how I want the story to end, I can flavour up the earlier bits showing that the end is coming. It's a wonderful thing, writing. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's very expressive. You can say what you want people to think.
If it was in modern times, it wouldn't be crucified. It would be, electric chair or lethal injection.
Lethal injection, they don't use the electric chair.
Yeah, I know. But, there would be lethal injection. oh, I know the lethal injection is coming.
Yeah.
And then you go and do something that would earn you the lethal injection in the correct area.
Well, the Bible said that he prophesied something that came true. It must be true. And it's like, how do you even know he said that?
You don't. There's no proof. It's just, it was written after.
There's another interesting fact that I forgot to mention about ancient historians. You know what the funny thing about ancient historians are? They weren't very historic. They were trying to tell the truth they wanted to tell, and it wasn't necessarily about keeping actual factual records of things that happened. Like, just look at Pliny. You know what I mean? Like,
so they'd tell the stories that they wanted told in the way they wanted them to be
objective history making, like the way we see it now, is only a couple hundred years old. You know what I mean? Like, this keeping very thingy records is very new. And like trying to get the historicity correct is a very new thing.
And they don't like it because it disproves a lot of what they're trying to say.
Well, so all of my doubts, all of my questions, that's where I begin to take an atheist to. So Garry Habbermas had a debate with one of the most famous philosophers of the 20th century, Antony Flew.
Yep.
And Flew was a well-known atheist. And he ended up becoming something of a deist, so to speak.
Yep.
And he began to be convinced with the fine-tuning argument. Now, what's interesting is who was Flew up against in his debates and friendship? Well, one of the greatest experts on the resurrection.
Right.
You know, you can throw N.T. Wright in there in the world.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, he could never come to that place. But guess
Serenity now! So, Garry Habbermas debated a guy.
Yeah.
And he debated a theist. Sorry, he debated an atheist. Sorry, Antony Flew debated Garry Habbermas, and he became a deist. And that's fascinating because, why? What's your point? He didn't become a Christian, according to you. So, what does Garry Habbermas being the perfect fucking Christian biblical scholar about Jesus' resurrection have to do with anything? You try with this really bad attempt to make it look like, oh, he convinced him that Jesus exists by your own admission he didn't. So what's the point?
Guess what? I think that Habermas was right in challenging him to think about the resurrection, and he never came around on that. So if we could talk to atheists and be equipped on some of the arguments for the existence of God, and be solid on the resurrection, I think that could be a great place for us for conversation.
Why? You've literally just told the story about how the preeminent fucking best scholar on the resurrection couldn't convince a deist of Jesus. But that's definitely the best place to. That's the best place to go. It's the best place to go. I don't have it like. You could have even just made up a success. I was talking to a guy and I told him about the resurrection of Jesus, and he went, "OMG, really? Wow, I guess I'll believe in God then." No, you tell a story about a guy who you say is a deist, and then go, "Hey, by the fucking way, he was talking to the best scholar about the resurrection and didn't believe him." So that's the way we should argue.
It didn't work the first time. It'll work the second time. That's the argument.
Yeah, I tried to convince a person that evolution is real talking about oranges. Well, that didn't work. Well, I'm going to continue to talk about oranges.
Yeah, and not like the things, like other things that exist.
Okay.
All the fruits.
It's okay, I'm sorry. You're a good girl.
But
now they're going to bring...
Sorry. I'd forgotten what I was going to say. Hold on. So they keep holding Antony Flew up. I've only ever heard his name like when I was looking at the videos. Antony Flew. Up as this thing, this shining beacon that one atheist turns to a deist.
Yeah.
And obviously all atheists are wrong.
Right, but this
guy turned.
See, this is why, this sort of thinking is why I know if they had any lick of proof, and this should be proof to fucking anyone that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. The amount these people will hold up people like Antony Flew as a conversion story, so you should believe, it just shows that if they had any shred of evidence or something they could cling on to, like any of their arguments, the fine-tuning argument, the moral argument, the ontological argument, the cosmological argument, all this shit, right? They cling to it because they think it works, right? So if they had actual proof, that's all they'd fucking say. If they had even one shred of evidence, that was, what about this here? this thing is 100% true. What have you got to say about that? Checkmate, atheists. And they would say it all the fucking time, and they never do, because they don't have a fucking shred of evidence. And they know it. That's why this fucking prick right here is talking to this shitty metalhead prick right here, telling him about a specific set of questions and a specific script you should go down and the way you should talk to try and convince people. And this is the way you should do it, because they don't have anything better. And they want to throw words around like the true historicity of Jesus. They didn't mention one fucking thing about it, did they? Because they don't fucking have anything.
No, the best they've got is if you can prove God, and which by prove God they mean if you can out-argue someone who doesn't know enough to know they're being lied to, then you can then say, well, if God exists, obviously it follows that Jesus exists, and it follows that I'm correct.
Yeah.
And I win. And you don't win, because, no, you haven't proven any of it at all. It's they just can't prove it.
No, they
don't have the evidence.
If they could, they would say that.
Mm. And you know what? If you did, we just accept it. It's because if you can prove it, and until something else comes along that goes, no, that's not actually quite the truth. It's actually just this, slightly away from it.
Yeah.
We'll go, okay, we'll switch to that. Because that is the thing that has the most evidence.
Come on, we're just going to circumnavigate the problems that they have and approach it from a different view, and then go, hey, I've made you believe this different view, so those problems aren't problems anymore, right? Hey, buddy, they're not problems, right?
I have 3 analogies for you. And by the end of them, you're going to be so confused that you're going to accept that I'm right? I have this friend.
I knew a guy.
Yeah.
He fell off the back of a truck.
Up the problem of evil. And here's something I like to say. Okay. So you bring up the problem of evil. And you struggle with believing in God because you think that he would intervene and he wouldn't allow so much suffering.
It's almost like he does it a bunch in the Bible. It's almost like in the Bible he keeps on appearing to people and helping them.
Yeah,
It's
guiding them.
Well, you know, and until he goes, hey, you're bad, I don't like you, I'm going to feed you to the fucking Babylonians.
Yeah, he counsels them and he guides them. He guidance counsels them.
Which is what I am.
Right. And he appears and he solves a lot of problems, and the further you get through like Old Testament and New Testament, the less and less and less happens. Until we get to beyond the Bible, we get to modern day, and we're like, but there aren't really miracles anymore because we have cameras and we can record things. A lot of things get caught on camera.
Not to mention other people that go, hey, if you believe in Jesus, good things come to you.
You know what? God did it once, right? Which God was it against Baal? Where he set things on fire to prove
it was Ezekiel. I think it's Ezekiel.
Yeah.
I really need to fucking remember that properly.
Yeah, so he set something on fire to prove his existence.
Oh, fire! Yeah, fire! 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 Fire!
Well, it was God has a set thing to set on fire, and Baal has a thing to set on fire, and Baal didn't set a thing on fire.
There's a toy owl here, and I know she probably likes this owl, right? But if you are real God, set this owl on fire, I'll proselytize. Me, an atheist for the last 19 years. Wow. I'll proselytize, I will go and preach if you set this owl on fire. I don't even care if it was a pure accident where something falls on an electrical wire, goes zzz, and bang, it's on fire. I'll do it. I'll turn. No, that's man-made interventions. If you set it on fire.
Yeah, but God compelled me to do it.
I said accident. Oh, fuck, I've got no defense.
He came to me in my thought cage.
You know what, I'm going to get you a Faraday cage for that thought cage, so you protect you from the will of God.
Well, let's say I walk out of Christianity and assume atheism. Okay, well now I've got an explanation for why there's so much suffering. You know, that's just, makes sense on naturalism, evolution, natural selection. But I have another problem that I've just adopted that I can't really find good tension or good resolve with.
Yeah.
And that is, what about ultimate justice? So
From this day forth, I will spread my buttery justice over your every nook and cranny.
There is no ultimate justice.
I was about to ask, What about it?
The ultimate justice is nothing, because justice is an idea that was created by humans. Justice is not a thing that you find in nature.
We don't have an ultimate justice, we just have justice, and it's something we will adapt and change as society adapts and changes. But they don't get that.
Well, as Death said in Discworld...
Now, tell me...
What would have happened if you hadn't saved him?
Yes.
The sun would not have risen.
Then what would have happened?
A mere ball of flaming gas would have illuminated the world.
All right, I'm not stupid. You're saying that humans need fantasies to make life bearable?
No. Humans need fantasy to be human. To be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape.
With tooth fairies, hogfathers.
Yes. That's practice. You have to start out learning to believe the little lies.
So we can believe the big ones.
Yes. Justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing.
They're not the same at all.
You think so? Then take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. And yet, you try to act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some rightness in the universe by which it may be judged.
But people have got to believe that. What's the point?
You need to believe in things that aren't true. How else can they become?
Justice is an idea that we have, that is and all justice is a self-gratifying feeling that something bad has happened to the person that has wronged you. That's all it is.
It's more, what's the word I can never pronounce? Schadenfreude.
Scootin' fruity. Scootin' and fruity. Scootin' fruity.
Schadenfreude. Yeah. Right? You want the bad thing to happen to the bad person. Yeah. So, like, today I saw an LBC post on Facebook that was a pedophile was murdered in jail before his sentencing, which I disagree with that happening, personally, because he's not been fully sentenced. He needs to go through the full justice system before he's found guilty. And then even after that, I don't really see murder as a good outcome. I have cognitive dissonance again. I don't like pedophiles. I wish they'd die, but I don't like murder.
But also, we shouldn't kill pedophiles because it's a brain disorder and we can get rid of it through counselling.
Ergo, bad thing. And all I can see is laugh reacts as the majority of reacts on Facebook, because people enjoy the bad thing happening to the bad person.
Like, I don't understand why there not being any ultimate justice is such a terrible, terrible thing. The justice that we visit upon people is something that as a society we come together under the social contract and say, these are the things that we don't do and these are the things that we're allowed to do. And as society progresses, those laws have erred more on the side. People have tried to make the law err on the side of the people. But too often, dickheads like this that want to oppress people because they don't believe the same thing they do, or the greedy fuckers who want to make more money for corporations, fuck up those laws, right? But that is why it is on us as the citizenry of the country or society that we live in to fight for the views that we have. That's why you proselytize, because you think it's correct. That's why we proselytize, because we think it's correct. That's why people go on about maybe we should stop killing everything, because everything will die.
We have to kill animals or else they'll die.
There's all these things that people like go for, and it's not from the Bible. It's from people's inherent need to have something good and make good things happen. And what those good things are completely different to each person. So, like, I can't not believe because of I need ultimate justice. But your version of ultimate justice is, hey, you can kill hundreds of thousands of people. But if you pray to God and say, I'm sorry, God, I believe in you, well, that's fine, you get to go to heaven. Where's the justice in that?
Say 10 Hail Marys and you're forgiven.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Like, where's the ultimate justice there? You get away with it by going, "I'm sorry, God," and he goes, "That's fine."
Yeah.
Like, fuck off.
On my deathbed, I decided to believe, and I went to heaven. The end.
I figure I'll go for the life of sin, followed by the presto changeo deathbed repentance.
Wow, that's a good angle.
I was like, okay, but you spent your entire life raping, murdering, pillaging, blah, 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 coveting oxen, wearing mixed fabrics, eating shellfish, and bumming men, right? On the deathbed, you pray to God. It's one of the things I wanted to say before. I don't know if it was the Steve Anderson video.
Doesn't matter, just say it.
But yeah, it's like, oh, okay, so go to heaven. Just believe on your deathbed, whatever.
Yeah.
You're done. You go into heaven. It's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So you're going to go to heaven, and there's going to be gay people there because they just went, you know what, I can cheat the system. If I pray and I believe at the end, it's fine because I'm going to go to heaven. I'm cheating the system, whatever.
Ultimate justice.
Yeah.
Ultimate supreme, ultimate moral justice right there.
Pol Pot, Mussolini, all these people, they just get away from it. So now...
They also, if God exists and the rules are you just have to believe and say sorry, well, Mussolini was a Christian. Hitler was a Christian.
Yep.
Like, Pol Pot wasn't an atheist. I can't remember what he was, but he wasn't an atheist. Like, Hitler wasn't an atheist. So, whatever. And your book says, believe in me and you go to heaven, so whatever, bitch.
let's come and put our Christian hat back on. Okay, well, with Christianity, we do have ultimate justice, and we have ultimate promise of being able to deal with our suffering.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you get the ultimate promise of dealing with suffering.
Yeah, they get the promise.
What does that even mean?
It means they've been promised something that they're obviously not going to get. Which they got ultimate justice. No, they have the ultimate promise of ultimate justice. They don't have anything more than a promise and a lie. And they put it across as, this is the fact. You know, we got ultimate justice, but where is it?
We get a promise of something. Do you get a promise being an atheist? Checkmate, atheists. It's like, fuck off. You don't get nothing.
You know what? I don't get a promise, but I get my Sundays. Whatever.
The problem that the atheist has is, why won't God intervene with the suffering right now?
Right now, yeah.
And we have to trust that God could have a good purpose for suffering and the evil that we experience that we don't understand.
So, you have a problem with atheism because they don't have ultimate justice. But as a Christian, you get the idea that maybe God has a plan. And if you hope really hard that it's true, then it's true?
Yeah. No.
Like, really? It's
all... It's when you've lost all of your defences and you're falling back on the last remaining, like, scraping the bottom of the barrel for your last hope. You know, it's all you've got.
I hope God's got a plan. I sure do. Yuck.
What was he saying earlier on? Oh, I shouldn't drink too much, but I forgot what he said at the beginning of this bit when he pressed play.
The problem that the atheist has is, why won't God intervene with the suffering right now?
Right.
I don't have a problem with it. You have a problem when it's brought up. That's what it is. I don't have a problem with God not intervening right now because I don't believe in one.
No, the problem of evil is that you and your ilk say that he is all just and super benevolent and the most loving, caring person ever. And, like, just, he's so loving he lets us suffer. Because...
Suffering...
And it's not just, oh, I missed the bus. The train's late. Somebody sent me a hateful message on Twitter. It's like, why, if God is so fucking loving, does he create people with really bad genetic disorders that have to suffer their entire life? What, just to teach other people a lesson? So he makes things to suffer so other people can learn lessons. It's not saying that he doesn't exist. It says that the boundaries that you've set for your own God are incoherent with his actions. And if it's incoherent with his actions and how you describe it, how should we ever be able to trust what you say with any veracity about your claims about God when something as simple as something being all loving and all benevolent, right, intentionally makes people have horrific lives with fucking life-debilitating conditions from birth that are no fault of their own, through no actions. None of you can't even say that these things didn't believe because they were fucking babies and they don't understand words. That is the problem. The problem is it doesn't comport with your idea of God. So why should we believe anything you say when you directly lie about his characteristics and offer no evidence or anything against it except, well, we can hope that he's got a plan.
Again, the problem is theirs, not ours, and it's the problem of if God is benevolent and God is all just, then why would he create
maybe
the possibility of evil?
Maybe you Christians should reevaluate your arguments. You guys are losing members at what you guys call an alarming rate. Like places like the UK are now less than 50% Christian when it used to be almost 100%. Because you guys are so bad at your arguments. You're so bad at putting across why God is real that people don't believe it because it's a fucking fairy tale. Because you don't have any proof. All you've got is fallacious arguments that lead on to other fallacious arguments that lead on to other fallacious arguments that lead on to assertions with no shred of proof the entire time going, I just gave you all the proof. You don't get your Bible quotes right. You don't understand the context in which they were written. You don't understand the fact that there's different versions out there. You just go, oh, you know, whatever. I don't like this form of Christianity, but I like this one. Catholics are really bad, but, you know, Baptists fine, Methodists fine. You know, but the Appalachian Snakehammers, that's bad. Ethiopian Christians, you know, because they believe in the Book of Enoch, although that's heretic. It's so fucking laughable. It's ridiculous. And you guys are nothing but a joke. And you guys, as a group, are so much of a joke that people are collectively not believing in your shit anymore. Because it's so much of a joke that even simpletons can laugh at it. Because...
Guys, he said that 4 times now. Who is he?
But you want to rely on the same arguments over and over again that convinced people 400 years ago, but now doesn't work on people the way they used to. And now you guys are lamenting that it doesn't. Like, it's a fucking joke.
All the arguments don't work because they can't punish you anymore because they're not in control. They're not in charge. They don't control the law. They don't get to decide that atheists, you don't believe, well, you're going to be flogged. And if you don't believe after that, we're just going to kill you at the end. Prison for life, death, blah, blah, blah. You can't do it. And they're very upset by this.
And we have to trust that God could have a good purpose for suffering and the evil that we experience that we don't understand. But see, when I consider that, that's the kind of conversation point. Okay, I'll walk away from Christianity, but now I've got a problem with justice. You don't want to come into Christianity because you have a problem with suffering, but I've got an answer for justice. And
you don't have an answer for justice. You have an answer. Well, no, that's the truth. He does have an answer for justice. It's just not the correct answer.
Yeah. It's like he'll walk away from Christianity, but he has a problem with what, did he say?
Justice.
So what justice does he want?
He wants God to burn people forever.
So you want to inflict suffering on other people, the neighbours that you're supposed to love. You want to inflict suffering on them.
Well, yeah, because they don't believe in God, so fuck them.
Yeah. I mean, we have our own justice system, and where he lives is a little harsher than what we have in the UK, right? Because some states still have the death penalty. I don't think we should be putting people to death for crimes. I mean, there are some.
I have no problem with the death. If you can prove 100% that they've done something with the death penalty, I don't see... Like, it's a serial killer. Why shouldn't we kill them? If we can prove 100% it's them, and there's DNA, like, unfalsifiable evidence, and it's 100% true, why shouldn't we kill them? Why should we pay for them to, like, exist?
I've got an answer for suffering, ultimately.
Well, I think one of the things that I do want to point out with what you're doing, and kind of give it some legs a little bit more, is... Oftentimes the atheists guys want to say, well, you have to convince me, right? So they're kind of shifting that burden of proof. And in some sense,
shifting it.
I'm sorry, but
shifting.
The proof is inherently on you.
I want to change up a bit. It's not just that it's inherent on them. We do provide proof.
Yeah.
Regardless, and we just ask them for their proof.
Yeah. See, the thing is, right? You trying to convince us. So, if you're trying to convince us, you need to prove him. If we're trying to convince you that God doesn't exist, then we've got to prove it to you. And using textual criticism, historical archaeological evidence, and just reading the fucking Bible and pointing out all the shit that didn't happen, and the things that can't happen that also like the fact that there's different genealogies, right? That are different from each other, containing the same people. So, I can't remember if it's Matthew or Luke. Maybe it's John. It has a genealogy that tries to say every 14 generations, it's like Abraham, 14 generations, Moses, 14 generations, it's another, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
David, and then Ezekiel, and then Jesus, right? And that's not what the Old Testament says. The Old Testament has that genealogy and it's much longer, because it's not trying to prove a point. So, if I can prove that something in your Bible, just one thing in your Bible is wrong, all I need to do is prove one thing in your Bible is wrong, then you have to prove to me why I should trust anything else.
And you could do it in the first opening verses of Genesis.
Yes.
So, like, the beginning of your book is wrong. We can prove it.
The first two chapters of your book, the first two chapters of your anthology of books, right, is contradictory on how God created the earth. And you can't say it's figurative because it's how God created the earth. Mm-hmm. If your book has a figurative creation for how the world was made, right? Why do you say then that Revelation is definitely how the world is going to end? If the beginning was figurative, why isn't the end figurative? Because Revelation is figurative, and it's not about the world, it's about Rome. The seven-headed beast that sits upon 7 hills. What's the city of 7 hills? Oh my god, it's Rome!
But yeah, at the beginning, it's either figurative and doesn't matter, and you cannot use it as an argument for creation.
No, it's not even that you can use it for an argument of creation, right? I don't understand how you can say your creation myth is figurative.
I know. But if they do say it, then it's invalid, and if they don't say it, then we've already disproved it, because A, it's contradictory to the second chapter.
No, it's not just that, though, right? It's so important to everything. Mm-hmm. They want to say that it's foolish that, you say about the Big Bang. You're saying that, like, you either believe that the story in Genesis is true or it's figurative, right? So, if it's true, well then, shall we comb through all the geological evidence and astrological evidence that says you're a fucking piece of shit liar who doesn't know anything and is lying by omission because you don't know and you don't understand, or you're just a liar because you do know what we say and you do know the things that get put across as evidence for it not being that way, and you completely disregard it because it really jives with your feelings, man, because you want to believe in God, right? So fuck off. And then if it's figurative, then literally everything in your book is figurative because the creation of the world is not a figurative story. And if you say the creation of the world is a figurative story, why should we believe anything that's in that book?
No point then.
Because you guys used to go on about how it was true, and then we started going, yeah, but there's accretion disks and nebula that spout out stars that make accretion disks that then form planets that have their own accretion disks that then form moons. And we can watch it happen in other places. Look at that thing over there with an accretion disk, like Saturn.
Yeah, the asteroids constantly collide with one another, making bigger ones.
Aren't the rings pretty? And it's like, yes, those accretion disk across Saturn that is making moons and is being made by moons like Enceladus, hurling hundreds of tons of ice an hour into space, creating its own ring to form an accretion disk. Come on. We can see it with our eyes.
So it's either figurative, there's 2 chapters that contradict each other, and both of those chapters contradict reality. So, you've got no legs to stand on.
No.
In fact, you've got 2 very broken legs, really.
But I hate it when they say, we've got to provide the proof.
Well, you're going to make a claim, you're going to have to prove it. And a lot of scientists are beginning to prove different bits about how the universe began.
Yeah.
Well, at least this state of the universe.
I mean, come on. Are you really going to sit there and tell me that the Big Bang is stupider than the God, the Lord your God, separated the waters from the waters with a vault and thus created land, and it was good. And then he made the night and the day, and it was good. And then he made some stuff, and it was good. And then he made the stars, and it was good. And then he made the animals, and it was good, and the plants. And like, really? You're going to tell me with a straight face that is stupider? That doesn't sound as stupid as everything in the universe was in one small, dense, hot, fucking pressured thing that exploded under its own density. And look at the way that everything is moving away from each other with redshift and the cosmic background radiation that is possibly the inflation of the universe after the Big Bang. oh, look at those things that we can see with our eyes and we can, like, use to find out stuff.
Have you not seen Elon Musk's latest venture of sending submarines into space because it's water?
What? Oh, yeah.
It's obvious it's water. So
I wasn't taking that as flippant for a second. I was like, what?
Yeah, because you've got the waters in the vault, and we have to get through the vault, and then we have the submarines out there.
And like, he totally only made 2 people who had 2 kids, and one killed the other, and then one of those kids found a bunch of people that God didn't create.
And then there was a 3rd kid mentioned.
But Adam and Eve had 90 children. Yeah, after Cain killed Abel. Not before.
How destroyed Eve must be after passing 90 children.
I mean, she was alive for 900 plus years, so.
Yeah, popping out one every 10 years.
That's the other thing. The Bible gives God, hey, in Genesis, everybody lived for hundreds of years, and then after Genesis, no one lived past 50. You know what I mean?
Many of them didn't make it past 30.
No, but you know what I mean? It's like Adam and Eve lived for 900 years, and Methuselah lived for over 1,000, and Enoch never died, and you know, like, come on. But Jesus' resurrection is the only thing you have to care about. Okay.
You just did, the way you described that is you're saying, look, we both have this problem, and kind of to get them to agree to some of that and say, which worldview best explains this thing that we're both looking at, whether...
Hello.
The one with the explanations.
Yeah, the one with explanations and evidences to show those explanations.
Yours has stories and claims, and we have scientists constantly figuring out how the universe works.
So you say that we have a problem with evil, and you go, yeah, but we have to trust that God has justice in the end. And you say, yeah, but you don't have justice, and we go, yeah, I know. Because justice is a human concept, and the justice that comes has come through the justice system. That's why it's called the justice system. Whether you agree with that justice system or not is a different matter. But the fact is we do have that kind of justice. And if you want to say that a serial killer goes out and murders a bunch of people and is put in prison for the rest of their life, or is killed by the death penalty, and you don't want to call that final justice, I'm going to call you a fucking idiot and a liar. What is not the final justice about? Well, there's no heaven and there's no hell. But also, you only get one life, and if you do a bad thing, then we're going to take away multiple years of your life. And if you do a super bad thing, we're going to take away the entire years of your life, and we're going to put you in a cage where you're under a hawk and eye by people that want to kick the shit out of you every 5 seconds. Like, I don't just mean the inmates, I mean the fucking people that actually work at the prison that will stick the boot in, because who's going to believe a fucking prisoner? And then they have to work under slave labor conditions, making stupid bullshit things, and it's not final justice. Fuck off. Just fuck off.
What worldview best explains our feeling of wrongness of something? What worldview?
Because I feel a feeling of wrongness comes from social structure that is inbuilt being social creatures, and how
things we learn and experience.
So take bats. There's a type of vampire bat, right? And they're really small, and they live in caves, and then, like, you know, if one bat doesn't get to drink enough blood, it can go over and it can kind of lick at another bat, and the bat will vomit up some blood, right? In the hopes that the next time that bat wants a little blood, he'll go over to the one that licked him, right? Then he'll give him a little bit of blood. And then if he doesn't, he gets pushed out by the rest of the group. And things like that happen in all of nature, in any social creature, and it happens in humanity. You know what I mean? It's like... Yeah. And that isn't because of God, it is because of our inbuilt psychology that isn't made by God.
Yeah, the feeling of wrongness when you do something bad to someone and they feel guilty. That isn't God. It's because you've made someone feel bad, and you can empathise with that person, because someone can make you feel bad and you don't want that, and then you feel bad that you've done the bad thing.
Because we are animals with higher cognition and have, you know, empathy, because we are higher reasoned animals. And you can look at other you can look at other animals like dogs who also have empathy because they have higher reasoning and higher cognition, and they're also social creatures. It's really weird. It's like when you look at creatures that don't have high cognition and aren't social, they don't feel guilty.
No empathy.
I mean, to be honest, dogs don't feel guilty about the bad things they've done. They're afraid you're going to tell them off.
But they do have empathy.
Yes.
So
we just take their weird face of fear as guilt because it's not the same. Oh, fear face. But they so. Pippin is a very excitable dog, right? And she'll like come at you and she'll go, "Ah, I'm happy, come here, ma!" And then she'll swipe you across the face and you go, "Ah!" And she goes, "Oh," and she'll come up and she'll start licking you because she feels bad because she's a social creature and she cares about other animals in the pack. That's what social creatures do. It's not a God-given gift; it's a nature-given gift, because social creatures almost always do better than non-social creatures. They just do, because they're working together and they're not solo. So you're not just fucking like. Do you think if like humanity had evolved to be not social creatures, we'd be where we are right now? No.
Yeah.
And it's not a God-given gift. It's the fact that we didn't have claws, we don't have big nasty teeth, right? We were basically a bunch of shitty omnivores that lived in trees that started to work together to overpower its surroundings. God didn't bring us out of fucking Africa and go, hey, go populate the world and kill off the Neanderthals and the Homo habilis and all these different versions of humanity or whatever that are everywhere, the hobbits in Java and different shit like that. God didn't do that. We did, because we're social creatures. And we know this happened because we have archaeological evidence from thousands of years ago that we can date through radioactive decay in some of the various items and tell exactly, well, not exactly, but round about roughly how old something is. And if we do that to enough stuff, we can actually get a more firm date of when these things happened. It's not hard.
I think it's roughly between 50 and 100 years they can guess to accurately.
It depends on the type of dating. It depends on the half-life of the atom they're doing.
Yeah. I think with carbon dating, it's within 50 to 100 years. Uranium dating is probably a little bit more loose.
Yeah, it's a couple million.
Yeah.
Who best explains the laws of logic or the existence of the universe in the first place.